I'll start with adjuvant chemotherapy. So, first of all, soft tissue sarcoma is a very heterogeneous malignancy. The most common, there are almost more than 100 subtypes. The most common site is extremity, followed by trunk, visceral, and retroperitoneum. So, I want to emphasize on few things that regarding multidisciplinary care is very important. The pathology is extremely important. And before starting any decision, be it chemotherapy or molecular testing, we must know about the diagnosis correctly. Just a second, I'll just use my headphones. The thing is that when do we have to give chemotherapy? Do we give adjuvant or neoadjuvant chemotherapy? What should we do? Radiation therapy first or chemotherapy? Or what is histology tailored treatment? So, as of now, in this day and age, the most important thing is multidisciplinary care. And the decision should be taken for every treatment with pathologist, radiologist, surgeon, radiation oncologist, and nuclear medicine people. So, if the decision of sarcomas should be taken by people who actually deal with sarcomas on daily basis. So what are the benefits of multidisciplinary meeting? The most important benefit for multidisciplinary meeting is that everyone is on same page, radiation oncologist, surgeon, pathologist. Second, patient doesn't have to suffer. There is no shunting of patient from one department to other. All the are taken on the same platform at the same day. Third thing, surgeons, pathologists, radiation oncologists, radiologists, they keep abreast. They keep everyone updated about the recent advances. So even the doctors are benefited by the recent advances. So pathology is the most important aspect of sarcoma management. It is a foundation of diagnosis, and there is significant discrepancy between the diagnosis in a tertiary care center as compared to other centers. And if you see the discrepancy rate, even in central London, even in Royal Marsden Hospital, inside London, outside Royal Marsden versus inside Royal Marsden, the discrepancy is 25%. That means that these sarcomas should be only seen by the pathologist who is seeing the numbers on daily basis. So the pathology report should be very meticulous. These are the prerequisites for pathology testing. A pathologist should always comment if the surgery has been done completely. They should comment upon the depth of tumor, the size of tumor. In fact, recently, in like 3 days back in my clinic, I saw a patient referred from a tertiary care center. The size of the tumor was not there, which is like extremely important to decide the further therapy. The grade should be mentioned by FNC LCC criteria or some other criteria which is validated. The necrosis, differentiation should be highlighted, and the mitosis should be exactly mentioned. The margin should be classified, even the lymph node status, and currently the recent studies, the ancillary studies have to be documented. So this is FNC LCC grading. A tumor can be well differentiated. If the differentiation is well differentiated, if there is no necrosis, mitotic count is 10 per high power field, then probably we are dealing with low grade tumor, and so on. So these 3 criteria should be mentioned meticulously. Why imaging has become extremely important? So there was a time when by default the imaging was CT scan chest, but nowadays, because as I said, everything has become histopathology directed. The imaging is sarcoma pathology based. So in case we have clear cell sarcoma, then or epithelioid sarcoma, then lymph node should be assessed meticulously. We should look out for lymph nodes in these subtypes. If it is myxoid liposarcoma, which has propensity for abdominal metastasis, abdominal CT must be done. If it is alveolar soft part sarcoma, clear cell sarcoma, and angiosarcoma, since these can metastasize to brain, and many times we have seen angiosarcoma, facial angiosarcoma going to brain, ASPS going to brain. So even brain CT has been suggested in these subtypes. So gone is the age when sarcoma, we only do CT scan chest and we don't deal with abdominal, brain or lymph nodal CT scans. So this is a patient with myxoid liposarcoma. As you can see, we got a CT scan abdomen done, and we found that patient had a myxoid liposarcoma in abdomen as well. This is patient with alveolar soft part sarcoma. You can see X17 positivity, and this is the brain metastases are present. So more often than not, we also go for PET CT. As of now, there is no clear-cut rule, but yeah, we can always follow up with PET CT because it gives us more disease sites, and we are getting more and more disease sites. But the main utility is in MPNST. So as we all know that malignant peripheral nerve sheath tumor is a tumor that happens in neurofibromatosis. So in almost 10% of all neurofibromatosis patients, MPNST is there. Like during their lifetime, 10% of NF patients will develop MPNST, and 50% of MPNST patient will have NF. So to differentiate between plexiform neurofibromatosis as compared to MPNST, we need PET CT because the ability of MPNST is much higher than neurofibromatosis. This is a boy who came to us in the clinic with, as you can see, the cafe au lait spot, the coffee colored spots all over the body. There were nodules all over the body. And he was saying he had multiple swellings, some of which were increasing. We got PET CT done. PET CT was suggestive of, again, multiple swelling, but one swelling in leg was FDG with, it was resected in our hospital, and subsequently it came out to be MPNST. This is case of, this is abdominal mass. Again, why imaging is very important. Is anyone there? Like, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is anyone there? Fine. So probably this is abdominal swelling. Patient came with retroperitoneal sarcoma. And as we can see in the imaging, there is fat attenuation. This fat attenuation is suggestive of liposarcoma. So liposarcoma is a subset in which we can give the diagnosis by imaging, and we don't have to do anything else. So role of adjuvant chemotherapy. When should we give adjuvant chemotherapy? What is the number of cycles? We should give before, after. We should give before RT or after RT. And to whom we should give. So we have to take into consideration few things, which is histological subset and which subgroup of patient. Like now we know that the histology is sensitive, then which patient should get it, and the toxicity analysis, both long-term and short-term toxicity. So as I said that it is a cobweb now, the numbers of the sarcomas are unlimited, and like for every differentiation, there are like 5 or 6 branching sarcomas. So this is the age when, so a decade back was the age of lumpers, that is they used to call soft tissue sarcomas, but now this is the age of splitters. We don't call sarcomas, we call synovial sarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, liposarcomas, MPNSTs, dedifferentiated liposarcomas, even liposarcoma is pleomorphic, dedifferentiated, well differentiated. So probably it is all based upon histology. So this is UK guidelines by Dengur et al. And in which they found that they obviously made the guidelines that chemotherapy should be given only in potentially chemosensitive subtypes. So what are these potentially chemosensitive subtypes, and when do we give in these subtypes? So the most chemosensitive soft tissue sarcoma are desmoplastic small round cell tumor, synovial sarcoma, myxoid round cells liposarcoma, uterine leiomyosarcoma. Moderately chemosensitive are pleomorphic liposarcoma, epithelioid sarcoma, pleomorphic rhabdomyosarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, and angiosarcoma. And chemo-insensitive sarcomas are MPNST, myxofibrosarcoma, dedifferentiated liposarcoma, clear cell sarcoma, and ESS. And in ASPS and extraskeletal myxoid chondrosarcoma, we usually don't give chemotherapy. So as we can see, what is this moderately chemosensitive and relatively chemo-insensitive? So even if sarcoma is moderately chemosensitive, even then the response rate is almost 20%. So this is because of inherent less sensitive nature of sarcomas. So it is very like conflicting when to give chemotherapy, when not to give chemotherapy. And this has been since long time. So it started in 1997 with a meta-analysis called SMAC meta-analysis. And this was a meta-analysis of individual patient studies. Uh, there were almost 14 trials were taken into consideration. The number of patients were 1,500. And in this meta-analysis, so the benefit of chemotherapy was seen in extremities, only extremities patients. And in this meta-analysis, the benefit was to the tune of 4 to 10%. However, in overall population, overall survival benefit was not there. So, but it was 1997 when the grade was not taken into consideration, when the chemotherapy regimens were not ifosfamide doxorubicin. Lot of chemo insensitive subtypes were also squeezed into this meta-analysis. And so the results were not very conclusive. And this is Italian trial, adjuvant chemotherapy trial, in which they tried chemotherapy in high-risk patients. The chemotherapy was given in more than 5 centimeter extremity or girdle, and they gave 5 cycles of ifosfamide epirubicin or doxorubicin. And they found that the adjuvant chemotherapy had positive DFS in OS benefit. However, on longer follow-up, the outcome was, again, the benefit disappeared. Probably the number of patients were very less for substantial this. So however, they still, at that time in early analysis, they found that chemotherapy benefit was substantial, 13% at 2 years, 4 year, 19%. And it was again followed by a meta-analysis, and there had been like a string of or a cascade of meta-analysis subsequently. So this is a meta-analysis, again SMAC meta-analysis. This time it was not individual patient data, and they found that chemotherapy has marginal overall survival benefit. The positive point in 2008 meta-analysis was that ifosfamide based regimens were also taken into account. And this URTC 62931 trial was the largest chemotherapy, adjuvant chemotherapy trial, in which almost 350 patients were taken. And the chemotherapy used was ifosfamide doxorubicin and along with GCSF. They found that again, chemotherapy benefit not there. So perhaps the trials, individual trials haven't shown any conclusive benefit, but probably the meta-analysis have, almost all meta-analysis have shown benefit. This might be a possibility that the benefit might not be the tune of more than 5 or 10%, but it could be 3 or 4%. And to detect this much of benefit, meta-analysis are appropriate, not the trials. Because in all the trials, they aim for almost 800, 900 patients, and they ended up with almost 300, 200 patients. So as of now, the current guidelines, when do we give chemotherapy? We give chemotherapy in chemosensitive patients, in patients who have more than 5 centimeter, and it's not or it's and deep-seated and high-grade soft tissue sarcoma. So if in chemosensitive sarcomas, when it is more than 5 centimeter and deep-seated and high-grade, and we give ifosfamide doxorubicin, considering that these regimens are extremely toxic. Almost 40% of patients end up in febrile neutropenia. As you can see, the cardiotoxicity is almost to the tune of 7%, even with short follow-up. So eventually the meta-analysis wins, and probably there is some benefit of chemotherapy, which is almost 4 to 5%. So when should we give RT first or chemotherapy first? So NCCN guidelines suggest that radiotherapy post-operative should be given within 8 weeks because of development of late fibrosis and because of proliferation of malignant cells. However, ESMO guidelines have different perspective. They say that radiation therapy should not be delayed because of start of chemotherapy. So the different guidelines state differently, and let's see the evidence. So this is the largest chemotherapy radiotherapy trial. So in the trial, some patients received chemotherapy surgery followed by chemotherapy followed by RT. Some received surgery followed by RT, and the local recurrence rate was not very different. So probably delaying of radiotherapy after chemotherapy had no adverse impact on local control rate. So with this trial and with this, though we try to give chemotherapy or radiotherapy within first 8 weeks, but we might give chemotherapy first or RT first, depending on the circumstances. However, if margin is close or positive, we always consider about giving RT first, followed by chemotherapy. And there might be some sarcomas like synovial sarcomas in which we give pre-op chemotherapy. So this question doesn't arise. So what about retroperitoneal sarcomas? This is altogether different entity, and the majority of data is extrapolated from extremities. How do you differ? How do these sarcomas differ from extremity sarcomas? The most important point in these sarcomas is they have local recurrence. So regarding liposarcomas, dedifferential liposarcomas, they recur locally, unlike leiomyosarcomas, which recur distantly. And the role of chemotherapy and NACT and adjuvant CT, there is no prospective or randomized control trial. Role of RT, I think we are all aware that STRAS trial has been presented recently, and pre-operative therapy failed in those 265 patients. The data is again retrospective and very skewed, so we cannot make head and tail out of this. And very frequently we use these nomograms to guide us the risk of recurrence. And I'll suggest for everyone's practice that if we use these nomograms, which are based upon FNC-LCC grading, histologic subtypes, multifocality versus unifocality, we can assess the 7-year disease-free survival. And with this disease-free survival, we can tailor our chemotherapy regimen and the indication of chemotherapy. In case the disease-free survival is too less, or there is overwhelming risk of recurrence, we might discuss with the patient regarding lack of data, and we might give them adjuvant chemotherapy. So I'll just close my talk on adjuvant chemotherapy. And as we can see that how do we follow up, which is the most important question. And these are the various guidelines: British Sarcoma Group Guideline, ESMO Guideline, NCCN Guidelines, and Radiation Therapy Oncology Group Guidelines. So it depends on the country and the insurance that government is ready to pay. In UK, majority of times government is paying for chest X-ray, and citing the CT scan might be too expensive for the years of life saved. And however, NCCN gives option that we can get chest X-ray or CT scan done. So personally, I think that it would be prudent to go ahead with CT scans, because there are some times that we detect small disease and we can carry out metastectomy, though that evidence of it is very less. And in our system, and the CT scans and chest X-ray don't cost much, so I think we should go for CT scans. So probably multidisciplinary meeting is most important. Pathology is very important. Nowadays, imaging is totally based on type of pathology. If it is clear cell sarcoma, ASPS, I'll go for lymph node imaging also. If it is ASPS angiosarcoma, I'll go for brain imaging. If it is myxoid liposarcoma, I'll go for abdominal imaging. Chemotherapy, there are multiple trials, multiple meta-analysis, but I will give chemotherapy to the people with chemosensitive sarcomas, synovial sarcoma, leiomyosarcoma, myxoid liposarcoma, with more than 5 centimeters swelling or more than 5 centimeters sarcoma, high grade, deep seated, and follow up probably, though chest X-ray is suggested by British guidelines, but we'll go for CT scan chest as per our convenience and national policies. Thank you. So I'll discuss now metastatic soft tissue sarcoma. So shall I continue? Hello. Shall I continue? Okay. Thanks. So regarding metastatic sarcomas, again, the histopathology is most important. Molecular testing must be done. Next generation sequencing doesn't yield any benefit. So the first line, how should we go ahead? We should give single agent doxorubicin, IFOS doxo. Now that we know laratumab is out after announced trial. So I'll come to all these points. First line treatment elderly, pazopanib, trabectedin, and eribulin, and immunotherapy. So when do we give the combination of ifosfamide doxorubicin as compared to doxorubicin only? There are 3 trials that address combination versus single agent. In EORTC, like EORTC trial, Picasso trial, and SARC O21 trial. And these are the results of these trials. So the response rate in double agent has always been higher and mostly significantly, which is statistically significant. In EORTC trial, it was 26% versus 14%. Progression-free survival is higher only in one trial. In other trials, and there is no benefit on overall survival. So probably, if we want good responses, that is, we want disease to shrink suddenly or in a couple of days, then we give double agent, or else it might be very toxic. The neutropenia rate is almost 40%, and there is no overall survival benefit by giving double agent. So if it is metastatic sarcoma, patient doesn't have too much of disease load, and we can go ahead with single agent doxorubicin, considering quality of time, quality of life. I think it is the most important thing. In metastatic sarcoma, when on an average lifespan is around 1 year or 1.5 years. So there is no overall survival benefit by combining 2 agents. Olaratumab, we know this as the target therapy which failed recently, and it showed dramatic benefit, but however the phase 3 trial, announced trial, showed no survival benefit. So what about, is there any alternative to doxorubicin in elderly, in patients with low ejection fraction? And many often than not, a lot of people give gemcitabine docetaxel in leiomyosarcomas. So let's see the evidence. This gentleman presented to us with left ventricular ejection fraction 50%. He had hypokinetic basal inferior wall. And so what kind of chemotherapy should we give in such circumstances? This is GS trial that compared single agent doxorubicin versus gemcitabine docetaxel. The primary endpoint was progression-free rate at 24 weeks. And if you can see, there is no difference in patients with doxorubicin versus gemcitabine docetaxel. I'm sorry, this is docetaxel. Even in leiomyosarcoma or in non-leiomyosarcoma, there is no difference between outcome of gemcitabine docetaxel versus doxorubicin. However, this was imperfect endpoint. A phase 3 trial doesn't usually has PFS, PFR as primary endpoint. So what about elderly? Is there some other trial in elderly that addresses the primary therapy of our sarcomas? This is trial which was presented by Dr. Victor Grunwald in ESCO 2018. And in this, pazopanib was compared with doxorubicin in liposarcoma patients and other sarcoma patients. Mind you, it was even liposarcoma were included, though pazopanib is not very effective in this. And this was non-inferiority trial. And as you can see, the PFS in per protocol population was almost same in doxorubicin and pazopanib arm. The febrile neutropenia rate were quite high in doxorubicin arm. So probably in elderly more than 60 years of age, we can give pazopanib. So these are the targeted therapies, and this is the cartoon that shows their mechanism of action. The pazopanib acts on VEGFR receptor, PDGFR receptor, tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Trabectedin binds to minor groove of DNA. Eribulin acts on microtubules. This is the registration trial after which pazopanib was approved. There were patients with non-adipocytic sarcomas. Liposarcomas were not taken. It was a placebo-controlled trial. Primary endpoint is progression-free survival. Crossover was not there. And they found that on an average, Pazopanib as compared to nothing or placebo increased life by 3 months. That is a progression-free survival of benefit of 3 months. And the hazard ratio was 0.31, which was quite significant. The overall survival was not benefit, like, there was no benefit in OS. However, the primary endpoint was progression-free survival, as we just saw it. Pazopanib is an oral drug, is very well tolerated drug, and the toxicities, grade 3, grade 4 toxicities were only fatigue, hypertension, and diarrhea. In Indian patients, the literature is less, and we presented this in ESMO Asia and ICON later on. And what we found that the median duration of Pazopanib in our patient was 4.4 months, median PFS was 5 months, and overall response rate was to the tune of 10%. And as compared to pellet trial, where the most common toxicities were hypertension, diarrhea, we had most common toxicities, hand-foot skin reaction. Probably we Indians do a lot of manual work, so causing erosion of hands. So, but there can always be, though 3 months seems to be very modest, but there can also be outliers and exceptional responders. This is a patient of cardiac angiosarcoma. As you can see, after Pazopanib, it persisted for around a year, and then patient progressed. So what another agent is trabectedin. This is a marine derivative which was initially taken from Actinidia turbinata, which is a sea sponge. And in Europe, it was EMA approved in around 2007 because of lack of any therapy after ifosfamide doxorubicin. This is a registration trial in which it was compared to dacarbazine in patients with L sarcomas. In sarcoma terminology, we call L sarcomas as leiomyosarcoma or liposarcomas. Primary endpoint was overall survival. And as we can see, again, like almost 2.8 months or 2.9 months benefit by trabectedin in progression-free. No survival benefit. Trabectedin was, it had higher toxicities as compared to Pazopanib, though cross-trial comparison is absolutely not done most of the cases. However, these patients were after more than 2 lines of therapies. And if you see dacarbazine, even the comparator arm had a lot of toxicities. So, but trabectedin, though in it's beneficial in L sarcomas, it is non-cumulative. That means in some patients, it gives long-lasting responses. This is leiomyosarcoma metastasis. This is after 3 months. And we have this patient is still doing well after 1 year. So some patients do well. And it is another indication of this trabectedin, translocation-related sarcoma. Translocation-related sarcomas are sarcomas like synovial sarcomas, myxoid liposarcoma, soft tissue shaving sarcoma, ASPS, clear cell sarcomas, and so on. So this was compared with best supportive care, and there was dramatic improvement in progression-free survival. And we found that the most important sarcomas that could be benefited by this drug is myxoid, extraskeletal myxoid chondrosarcoma and mesenchymal chondrosarcoma. And this is a patient which stayed well for almost more than 1 year. And now this publication is under review in clinical sarcoma research. So next agent is eribulin, approved in liposarcomas. And it was compared with dacarbazine. In L sarcomas, leiomyosarcoma and liposarcoma, primary endpoint was overall survival. This is the only drug in second line which improves overall survival. It was OS benefit of almost 2 months. And there was no PFS benefit. This is very similar to breast, in which the benefit again is in OS and no PFS benefit. If you see the subset analysis, only benefit was there in liposarcoma. There was no benefit in leiomyosarcomas. And hence it was approved in liposarcomas. But to tell you the truth, it is the first drug that has been approved on the basis upon subgroup analysis. And this is really scrutinized till now. And we have no more data with eribulin after this trial. Let's see some more data comes. I don't know about efficacy of eribulin, and I really can't say because we have very less liposarcomas in India. So overall, whatever I have told you, this histopathology based treatment has crept into the metastatic setting now. And for almost every sarcoma, we have different drugs. For angiosarcoma, we have taxanes, gemcitabine, IMFT, ALK inhibitors, DDF liposarcoma, CDK, and trabectedin. Obviously, picomas, we have mTOR inhibitors, non-adipocytic Pazopanib. This is our paper on DFSP. Imatinib is excellent drug for it, but the diagnosis has to be very accurate. And the translocation 1722 is not yet available in India. And probably expert pathologist, again, the underlying the importance of expert pathologist. So we have now 9 patients on immunotherapy as well. So who are the patients who should receive immunotherapy? And we have like published a few papers on immunotherapy from India. And as you can see, there were in SARC, the SARC O2S 8 study took 10 patients each of UPS, LPS, synovial sarcoma, and leiomyosarcoma. And they found 7 out of 40 patients responded. Maximum response rate was in UPS, undifferentiated pleomorphic sarcoma. And it was, again, this study was expanded, and it was the expanded results are present in ESCO 2019. And they found that UPS still holds 23% response rates, and rest everything, it was less than 10%. In leiomyosarcoma, the results have been really disappointing, and almost in SARC O28 trial, no patient with LMS responded. Again in a trial by Suzanne, Dr. Suzanne et al. From ISKCC, no patient for LMS responded. Combination therapy doesn't have overwhelmingly high response rate as compared to single agent nivolumab. Alveolar soft part sarcoma is another sarcoma in which immunotherapy is very active. Like the response rates are as high as 40%. So these are two subtypes, UPS and ASPS, with maybe clear cell sarcoma and maybe angiosarcoma, in which we might give immunotherapy. So thank you. I really thank my department for helping me with all these presentations and pics. Thank you. And if you have any question, then please let me know. I'll happy to answer it. Hello. Yeah. So my presentation is done. If any questions are there, I will happy to answer. Yeah.
Sir, there are some questions in the chat box.
Yeah. So first is NACT or adjuvant therapy and how to decide. Adjuvant chemotherapy. This is regarding adjuvant chemotherapy. Yes, chemotherapy. So adjuvant chemotherapy should be given in chemosensitive sarcomas like leiomyosarcomas, synovial sarcomas, myxoid liposarcomas. If it is more than 5 centimeter, high grade and deep seated. Now, when to give neoadjuvant chemotherapy? Till now, neoadjuvant chemotherapy is experimental. Only Italian people give this in combination with radiotherapy. And we have also given to almost 30-40 patients, but we practice it only in synovial sarcoma and in combination with radiotherapy. So probably most of the time NACT we don't give. However, in myxoid liposarcomas, trabectedin is a good NACT drug. And in myxoid liposarcomas, we give trabectedin. And again, along with RT. So regarding ifosfamide doxorubicin, we have given to many patients with synovial sarcoma. And the response, I think we have an abstract also, and the response it is quite 30 to 40%. So probably we have to select before giving NACT. We cannot give to myxofibrosarcoma, which is less chemosensitive. And the response rate to NACT in there are phase 2 trials also 28 to 30% in unselected patients. The ideal sequence is, if margins are, again, it depends on the type of sarcoma, if it is local recurrence is high or distant recurrence is high. So regarding, we should, if margin is too close, then RT should be done first and then chemotherapy. Otherwise, chemo first or RT. As I told you in adjuvant EURTC 62931 trial, there was no difference in radiotherapy even if RT was delayed after chemotherapy. So though the evidence is less, but we might delay RT after chemotherapy, but as per NCCN guidelines, it should be given within 8 weeks. So we should see pro and cons and then we might take a call. Any other questions?
Okay. So thank you so much, sir, for giving your valuable time to us and educating us with a wonderful class. And we look forward to more classes from you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, no problem. No problem. Bye.
There is a question, sir.
How is versus ice? So ice therapy is nothing. This is ifosfamide carboplatin etoposide. I etoposide is not a drug which is useful in any sarcoma other than MPNST. In MPNST, the topoisomerase expression is very high, so you might use etoposide. But in other sarcomas, gemdosi must be used. But gemdosi has good activity in, like, it depends on type of sarcoma. Gemdosi had activity in leiomyosarcoma, but not in synovial sarcoma.
So thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.